Hey there, we're the Westlaw Pirates and welcome to the show. We're here to share our thoughts on Northwestern athletics and college sports with thoughts and analysis from the visceral to the statistical. We run our tailgate with the red pirate flag flying high above as we give no quarter, especially the fourth. I'm Sam Walter.
I'm John Lacombe.
And I'm Eric Scousbo.
You wouldn't think about it with the massive amounts of snow falling outside here tonight in Chicago, but we are in spring sports season. We got softball and lacrosse started up this past weekend, and a couple really good starts by both teams. I think let's start off with softball going 3-2 in their opening weekend trip down to Clearwater, Florida, starting off on Friday night or Friday midday again with a 5-4 win against Kennesaw State, losing to Missouri 3-0 later that evening, and then coming back the next day, that Saturday, beating Duke, number 8 rated Duke 4-1, and then number 5 Tennessee lost 12-1, and finally wrapped up the weekend with a 2-1 win over Southern Miss. So great win over Duke. Nice win over Kennesaw and Southern Miss. Obviously, Tennessee is the number 5 team in the country for a reason, but it's good to get the season started. And what did you guys see from this opening weekend of softball?
Well, first, it's kind of obviously we've been on such a long ride with this incredible team for so long, right? Through 3 Big Ten championships, College World Series appearance. You all know there's something about this team, and this is no short shrift to lacrosse, who we absolutely love and get so much out of lacrosse in the spring too, but there's something about softball that's just like a warm hug, where like it's so many familiar faces, and they all seem to be having so much fun that all it takes is like watching 1 or 2 games, and you're like, oh man, I'm just pulled right back into how great this is. But in the case of this particular team, the team that is on the field is just so incredibly familiar. For a couple of reasons. One is Lauren Boyd and Grace Nito both coming back from injuries that knocked them out of last season, right? So it's 2 major roles on the team, basically our primary ace and our second baseman, are players who we know well but are coming back in. So it's like 2 of the quote-unquote new additions to the team are people you know really well. Izzy Kania in left field is the only player who was kind of in a reserve role last year and not injured, who is in the starting role now. She's out in left, and taking that Angela Zedak spot. And then Kaylee Avasado is the new addition, and we'll talk plenty about her. But so much of it is players we know really, really well, just kind of maybe a few shuffled around, but it's like you still have Kelsey in right, you still have Ayana in center. Kansas has moved over to first. Bridget is at the hot corner now. Of course, Emma's still at catcher. And now you have Grace at second and Lauren on the mound. And it's players you know really well and love, and players you've seen play at the very highest level, and and they hit the ground running. So it pulls you back in so fast.
I want to highlight how bananas this tournament was this weekend.
Right?
So usually these weekend tournaments early in the season, it's, 6 or 7 teams, and you don't always play all the other teams in the tournament, but this one seems particularly cuckoo to me. So Northwestern played Kennesaw State, won, lost to Missouri, as you said, beat Duke, lost to Tennessee. So I was just pulling up some of the other schedules to see how these teams did against each other, and I was really surprised to see the other squads in this tournament. So looking at what Missouri did over the weekend, they started by beating Marshall, then beat us, thumped Duke, lost to Notre Dame, and then beat Iowa. So Notre Dame and Iowa were also at this tournament. Looking at Duke's lineup, Duke started by thumping Penn State 7-0, then beat Mississippi State 8-0 in 5 innings, lost to Missouri, lost to us, and then beat Kentucky. And Tennessee got smoked by Nebraska in their first game, beat Bethune-Cookman, then thumped Iowa, Notre Dame, Northwestern, and Pitt in successive games. So there's a preposterous number of
wow,
Division I teams in this conference, and nobody ran the table here, I guess is my other big point. Like, everybody took a big win from somebody else, and everybody took a loss somewhere. And that's just kind of an interesting way to couch what were Northwestern specific results.
My big takeaway from that, Scuzz, is I'm looking out my window at Snowmageddon right now and being like, man, I wish I could have been in Clearwater for this tournament all weekend. Could have watched like 15 softball games, enjoyed the weather. But yeah, I mean,
hey, we got 2 inches of snow on the ground here in Cincy, so I'm right there with you, man.
But I mean, like your point too. I mean, like the craziness, right? But and highlighting just the depth of teams that were at this tournament, how many top teams are down there, right? And just 3-2 coming out of this with a win over Duke is a fantastic result. Obviously, they're trying to win them all, but no one, right? Like as Sam said, like getting your clock cleaned by the number 5 team in the nation, like I don't care at the end of the day. I mean, and I think if we kind of dig into it, you look at the problem and you're like the pitching has been pretty good. The Tennessee game was kind of a mess, but Lauren has been really strong. And you have Lauren, you got 7 innings out of Lauren, complete game against Duke in that big one. And then down the stretch, I think in the last game, I want to say you got Riley G went a full 7 also. So the Cats are getting really good pitching, and they're getting really good pitching from pitchers. The bats have been quiet. So the team as a whole that's one exception. With one major exception. But all the players you are used to absolutely raking for this team, chiefly Kansas Robinson, are not hot right now. And that's the kind of thing where it's like, what do you think? Kansas Robinson's not going to start raking? Like, I mean, come on. Like this, like it's not something that I think anyone is worried about. And yes, as Sam alluded to, it is a blow that is softened by the fact that, yeah, we maybe have the hottest hitting freshman in the nation.
Yeah, Kaylee Avasado just coming out of the gates, 100 miles an hour. I mean, she's hitting 563, OPS of 1.401, slugging 813. I mean, she's just hitting the cover off the ball, and it's been 1 week of college softball for her.
Yeah, this was, of course, an absolute monster recruit. This was one of the top 10 players in the nation. It's one of the biggest recruits really across any sport that Northwestern has pulled in. It was, of course, a massive recruit. Kaylee was a massive get for Northwestern softball. And then it's a question of, right, so you get a recruit like that, and how does she slot in? Quite well. She's the shortstop position looks to be locked up for the next 4 years. She's immediately amazing. And it's really wild for me, too. Again, so we talked about the infield, too, but you see just this, a potentially generational player coming in at shortstop, and with Grace also coming back at second, and the way it shuffles pieces around. So now you have Kansas over at first, you have Bridget over at third. But yeah, I think our general feeling is this was a fine start to the season. The bats are going to heat up, but you have this, apparently generational.
It's the first weekend in February. I mean, let's not worry about hot bats yet.
Right.
Well,
exactly.
Maybe we can get some hats for those bats because they go down to Baton Rouge this upcoming weekend where they will face a really good LSU team, kind of on par with that Tennessee squad. So it'll be interesting to see how they perform against that similar competition. They get to play LSU twice. UT Arlington, which is unranked, and then a number 18 ranked Virginia Tech team, which I think is a great test for we lost to, what was Northwestern, 20th coming into that tournament. They lost to number 15 Missouri and beat number 8 Duke. So, a number 7 LSU and a number 18 Virginia Tech will be interesting to see how they look this weekend. Hopefully those bats can look a little bit better. I think Lauren Boyd being back on the mound and I fingers crossed, hopefully being healthy, staying healthy, is the best thing this team has going for it right now. And in addition to all the familiar talent that you mentioned, John. So, if we can see some improvement on the offensive side this weekend, that portends some really great stuff.
One other thing I'll say is this is a team that prides itself in team defense. I think we're all aware that by some unbelievable stroke of luck, we were able to follow up the Jordan Rudd era with the Emma Ray era, and somehow we're stringing together heading into our really 6th consecutive year minimum with arguably, what the best defensive catcher in the country, or at the very least in the conversation. And in Duke, they did it with defense, and we know what Ray brings. But Kelsey had an absolute SportsCenter worthy catch in that game, just an absolutely ludicrous catch where I wish that there could have been the perfect freeze frame because she was fully extended for it. And then an amazing double play to get out of an inning late in the game where Bridget Donaghy threw an absolute note perfect third to first to turn the double play, and just absolutely beautiful. So the defense was there. And then the other thing, and we mentioned it on our socials, was just there was that shot of Bridget. She just has this incredible throwdown in this big game, and they're all walking off, and Bridget's trying to play it cool. And then Lauren Boyd and Izzy are just like, no, like that will not, like they're just like jumping all over her. And then like everyone's hugging, everyone's smiling. Coach Drohan brings them in, and she's giving this like, speech to them and everything in the middle of the game. And it's just like, damn it, Northwestern softball is so great.
When you posted that, John, it was great to see, and it brought me back to when we previewed last year's team with Sydney Supley. And one of the things we asked her, because of course the year prior, Northwestern had been loaded with all these super seniors who had decided to come back for one more run, and this was, Coach Drohan and the team having to really open a new era. And when we talked with Sydney, there were a lot of comps to Boo Booey and the bridge concept, right? Of bridging from one era to another and having some of those key players in the locker room as part of the team, so that you can not just bridge from a talent and a competent play standpoint, but also from identity and culture. And you saw that come through in spades for the softball team last year, and here they are starting the season, and it looks familiar. They've successfully moved from one era to the next and brought that culture and that excellence, that tight game mentality, the fun, etc. And it sounds dumb and obvious, like, oh, of course they did, like that's who they are. But it's easier said than done, y'all. And it was really cool to see that play out in that way, and to harken back to the what Sydney told us about how important that was and how valuable that was going to be going into this past season.
For sure. And it is incredible, right, to think of how utterly familiar this team is, and then how few through lines there are between the College World Series team and this team.
Yeah.
Like, it's pretty incredible. It's a totally different set of girls, and like you feel like you know them like the back of your hand. I mean, it's amazing. It is. It's a testament to the culture that Coach Drohan builds with this team. But damn it, they're fun to watch.
Absolutely. Another team that's fun to watch is Lacrosse.
Accurate.
They're back, and actually
boy.
In a similar way, like they're kind of in the mold of last year's softball squad.
Yeah, absolutely. Starting off the season with 2 wins, one over Notre Dame, 13-10, a game that was not as close as the final score indicated, much like another big game this past weekend. Final score not anywhere indicative of how big of a butt whooping was actually placed on the field. Fly, Eagles, fly.
Go Birds!
This is where I'm always like, all of you who Sam as a Northwestern fan, not all of you know him as a voracious Denver Broncos fan, but boy, you would have if you would have watched the Super Bowl with him.
I was fully pulling for Kansas City in that game, but I mostly because I hate Philly, but I've come around to the idea of Jalen Hurts and some of the other excellence on that team that I mean they earned it for sure on the field, but
for sure. But not here to talk about the Super Bowl yet. Maybe we can come back to that later on if you want. I'm happy to revel in Kansas City's demise. That's all well and good. But 13-10 win over Notre Dame, 23-3 butt whooping of Canisius. We don't really need to get into that too much. But that Notre Dame game, I think we do want to kind of look at. Just an incredible start to that game, rattling off 8 straight goals to start the game, go up 8-0, and then from there, Notre Dame kind of came back a little bit, but like I said, at the end of the game, they scored twice in the last 2 minutes to make it a 3-point game. It was 13-8 with 3.5 left in the game. So, again, it seemed well in hand, and they scored a couple, but at that point, they weren't getting 3 more in 30 seconds. That's just, it's possible, but incredibly unlikely.
Yeah, so 8 goals in that opening stanza, 5 of them assisted. And just for reference, last year's team scored 354 goals and had 165 assisted. So less than 50% of last year's goals were assisted for Northwestern. And I assume that if you score on a like an 8-meter after a penalty, that's unassisted. But it points to something we talked about with Yen Lee as we were previewing this season, and that was obviously Maddie Taylor was going to be the primary focus on offense, and she was. She scored 3 of those first 8 goals. 4 of those first 8 goals. But then Nikki Miles, who transferred in and was seen as the not heir apparent to Aaron Quickendall, but the person that would be doing a lot of the setup, be a second fiddle on offense, etc., assisted on 3 of those goals. And the rest of the way in this game, Northwestern did not have any assists. Notre Dame only had 3 assists on their 10 total goals. And it just kind of like it shows you, or at least it shows me, the nature of this team and the fact that they were able to come out of the gate connecting and on fire, not just with one dominant offensive player in Maddie Taylor, but in the system and the connections within the team and the chemistry, if you will, right? So that's what they're going to need to go forth throughout this year. But it was great to see that on display from the jump in the first game, much like we thought it could come together.
Yeah, I think when we were talking with our preview with Yen last week, everything that she kind of filled us all in on, you basically saw, I think, first of all, like just about everything that she laid out is basically how it went. We knew, the idea that so much was going to run through arguably the best player in the country, Madison Taylor, but that Emerson Bolig, who, was such a massive reserve contributor last year, was going to be someone who was really going to step up. That's exactly what we've seen. She had 3 goals against Notre Dame. The impact of all of these transfers, right? Just like Scuzz was saying, the Miles sisters, Riley Campbell from Harvard, all making a big impact. One of the questions that we had kind of discussed based on Miles coming in, I guess Nikki Miles coming in, given that she was so good at draw controls, would be like, well, what's the split going to be? I think probably, as we probably would have guessed, Sam Smith, who we've all known to be one of the very best draw control players in the nation, is getting the lion's share of that work. Maddie Taylor is getting a lot of it also, and then Miles is getting a piece of it. The interesting thing, the wrinkle that I don't think any of us are, we're expecting, and I guess we'll still wait and see kind of what answers we get on this, is Francesca Argentieri starting in goal against Notre Dame and not Delaney Schweitzer. And Schweitzer did not play against Notre Dame, did not play against Canisius either. I believe Argentieri and Kara Nugent, I think, split time against Canisius, and I think Nugent started. But Argentieri was between the pipes for the big one against Notre Dame. So that was kind of a big surprise, and was out there for a huge win, right? So then I guess the question is, well, is that what we're going to see going forward? I don't think that's what the average lacrosse fan was expecting. It certainly went fine against Notre Dame. Well, I guess we'll see. But aside from that, it very much is as it was laid out to us by Yen Lee in the preview. It is this mix of these really talented players that the massive impact of all of these transfers coming in, and combined with that, they put on a dominant display. I think there was probably a little bit of a moment, given the way that things kind of fell in against Notre Dame in South Bend last year, that as things tightened up a little bit late, there were probably, a few nerves, but overall, it was pretty smooth sailing. And obviously the whole day beginning with this feeding of Izzy Skane, rolling right into this absolutely dominant first quarter. I think everyone who was at that one had a great time.
Well, speaking of big games in Ryan Fieldhouse, Saturday, Boston College. So they had a full week between, almost a full week between the Canisius game and Boston College coming up this Saturday. It's huge. It's a rematch of the national championship game. I'm reading Yan Yan's recap from the first week on Inside NU, and she references that this will be the first time Northwestern's been an underdog since 2023.
That's amazing.
Wow.
So we'll see what the Cats can do with the with the chip on their shoulder and playing from that underdog perspective. Obviously, they know this Boston College team because they faced them last year. Unfortunately, that means that BC brings back a lot of firepower, almost all their firepower. So I think it makes sense that Cats are not favored in this one, and we'll see what they can do on their home field against the best team in the country.
One thing I was thinking about this relative to Notre Dame and thinking about this relative to BC, and I'm just the notion of I would never play the old man card in a situation like this, but damn it, am I jealous of the current undergrads, and damn it, are the current undergrads lucky that just in late winter, early spring, they just have a team like this that it's like, oh yeah, you can just go over to Ryan Fieldhouse and watch number 1 versus number 2 in lacrosse. And I just think of Scuzz like my freshman year, I was at Sargent and just being like, just stroll on over from Sargent, watch the top 2 teams in the country play lacrosse. What a luxury. An amazing ticket to be able to have as a student.
The Ryan Fieldhouse part of that statement too.
Yeah,
I might
right.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Man, February 15th on the lake Phil is not for the faint of heart. So
Yeah, if you're able to get out to that game, do it. Are there still tickets left? Just clicking right now. Let's see.
It was a full house against Notre Dame. So
yeah.
It will sell out. That's for darn sure if it hasn't already.
It looks like as time of recording on Wednesday night, I can buy a ticket.
We'll get y'all a ticket.
Yeah, it's probably not going to last.
Go. Yeah,
get out there. Then obviously next week, next Tuesday the 18th, Niagara. Friday the 21st, Colorado comes to town, and then they hit the road to take on Syracuse on February 25th. So that takes us through the end of February, and it's just great to have lacrosse, softball. Baseball starts up this weekend. I'm very interested, and like we talked about last week, I'm really interested to see what baseball is going to look like this year. So we'll definitely keep a close eye on that. If you or a loved one is seriously injured by someone else's negligence, hire Kent Simpson of the Simpson Law Group. After over a decade prosecuting murder cases in Chicago, Simpson opened his own firm focused on wrongful death and personal injury cases. He specializes in car, truck, motorcycle, boat, and other transportation accidents, as well as construction accidents, medical negligence, slip and falls, product liability, and more. Millions recovered for clients, no fee unless he wins. The Simpson Law Group, compassion, empathy, and vigorous advocacy. Go to simpsonlawgroup.com or call 312-332-2107 for a free consultation, and go Cats. Turning our attention to the winter sports as the snow continues to fall outside my window here as we record. Let me ask you guys a question. If a game happens in the middle of a night
on a forest, on a field painted like a forest, on a court painted like a forest,
and no one's there to watch it, does it really happen?
Not if we lose. That's my takeaway. Who can say that Oregon game even occurred?
Sadly, my ESPN app is tuned to show me Northwestern results above all other results, and so c'est la vie.
Tough trip out to the West Coast, dropping a pair to Washington and Oregon.
First of all, it all starts and this didn't get into our last pod. It all starts with the news that Jalen Leach is out for the season.
Yeah.
Leach out for the season, torn ACL. We were hoping he would be able to come back, and he's not, and that's a real bummer. Presumably the end of his college career. But then to lose these 2 games, Washington by 5, Oregon by 6, God, it just stings, man.
Yeah. And of course, like, the flipping high knees ref eject Collins, like right at the beginning of Washington, which, like, that dude has been involved in several of the shit shows this season. So that was immediately directed the ire. I would say Collins was hot and was on him a lot of the game, which, I mean, I could give a shit. Like, the stuff we've had to deal with from the refs, like, he should have been. I was bummed, but at the same time, I mean, part of me wishes like a little extra consideration, being like, for the love of God, can Chris Collins get a break? Like, this guy has been absolutely jobbed by the officials on the road in several games this season. In the past handful of games, he's watched really probably 2 of his 3 best players be out for the season. And now he's out on the West Coast at a 9:30 p.m. tip, 9:30 Central p.m. tip in Washington. And then he's getting kicked out of the game like right away. I mean, it just sucked. Like it was just a crap situation. I mean, and props to, Nicky Buckets and the guys for fighting. They played a good game in the second half, but this team they are limping right now, man. They are limping as much as you can be, and you get no favors on the road in this conference.
I mean, the only quibble, I'm sure Collins said the magic words. Everyone just seemed to think like, wow, that came really fast.
Yeah.
Like, very little warning, not much, and it was a bad call at the other end that he was barking about.
It sure was,
like full stop. And I just, like, it continues to feel like whether it was Purdue last year or I don't know what it is, but the Big Ten refs don't really seem to like Chris Collins. He seems to get less rope than other coaches in this conference, and I don't know why that is. I don't think there's some, anti-Northwestern conspiracy. We have seen it many, many times in the past that there's a bit of a, it's just Northwestern, smallest fan base in the conference. They're not going to throw bottles on the court. Like please, people, do not throw bottles on the court.
Yeah. We do not condone that. That's not okay.
Yeah. Point being, like, it's just hard. It's just hard to ferret out why. And maybe it's just a real string of bad luck. And I'm not watching every game for other teams, so it's certainly possible that other teams are getting jobbed too, but it just seems so much more egregious in what we've seen the last couple of years. But at the same time, at this point, like, this team is, they're so brutalized with the number of players that have been injured. And you see, Martinelli showing up in that Washington game. Mullins has looked great a couple games in a row. And then, this Oregon game, Ty Berry has another one. It was 8 for 10 from the floor. It's
a bummer.
Like, so close, it's like if they could just put it all together on one night.
You see these individual performances too, and it sucks because it's like this team's missing two of its 3 best players, right? And this is a team that, as we were saying, has been basically jury-rigging point guard the entire season, and then losing 2 primary ball handlers.
Let's talk about this.
Let's get into that. We should probably bring up the Jordan Clayton of it all.
I went on a bit of a it wasn't even a rant, but just kind of like I'm frustrated. I've been frustrated all year with the time that some of our bench players get. I haven't understood the rotations. Can
I just put a pin right here? One of Scott's core points was that KJ Wyndham probably should have had more run up until now, and that given how much we're going to need him to handle the ball, it would be good to have him a little bit more seasoned. And man, did the Oregon game. Yeah.
KJ. I mean, when Leach went down at the end of now, who'd they play before Washington?
The
USC.
USC. Yeah. When he went down at the end of the USC game, is like, can we get KJ out there? I mean, I know like he is a freshman, but he seems to be a much better ball handler under pressure than letting Nick Martinelli get like just attacked the moment he gets across the line. And then, yeah, he showed out against Oregon. I just like, get that dude 2 extra minutes a game earlier on in the year. It's going to pay dividends for you now. And so like that's been my primary frustration up to date. But then, and this is no shade to this player at all, but kind of out of nowhere, Jordan Clayton, who I guess like this is based on what the announcers were saying before the Washington game, that Jordan Clayton was going to redshirt this year. He played in like 11 games last year. We saw him plenty on the court. He was going to redshirt this year, and I guess with Leach's injury, they decided they needed to play him. And okay, that kind of makes sense. But on the other hand, like, so he gets out there. He had some good moments. He had some bad moments. Certainly scoring the ball, shooting the ball, he looks quite rusty. Handling the ball, he looked pretty competent against Washington. And for a team who has been like, as one of you guys said, like, point guard by committee, kind of figuring it out as we go at point guard throughout the year, like, why were we redshirting him? And then what was the impetus for pulling him now? And why him instead of KJ? I just like, there's so many questions that don't really make sense. And I know some of it is Collins is always going to prioritize defense because that's the identity. That's where this team, you know, when they brought Chris Lowry in 2 years ago, like that's how they made their bones and how they made the tournament 2 years in a row, was reestablishing that defensive pedigree and getting it right on that side of the floor. But it just like it has just seemed confusing and inconsistent at best how they have operated the rotations this year. And we're not the only ones asking this question. It's just weird. And obviously we're not in the back, you know, we're not in practice. We're not in the coach's room. We're not like, there's not some conspiracy here. I'm certain it's just strange choices. And I don't know, a season with injuries and other things like can force strange choices, and hindsight's always 2020, but man, it like, I already know we're going to go into next year and guys like Sheravino and KJ, hopefully they get more run. They probably aren't going to get enough. And when they do get run, they're going to be making mistakes, and we're all going to be thinking, gosh, wouldn't it have been great if they got more run last season? It just like, we just perpetuate this year after year. Let's stop.
Yeah. It's like, it's a mix of two things where it's like, on one hand, this is all very much true. And we're all looking, being like, oh man, like, why did we make these decisions? And man, like, look at how Wyndham played against Oregon. Like if we had given him some more and more meaningful reps at one, could he be functioning as a de facto point for us right now when we so desperately need one, et cetera, et cetera. And then on the other piece, I am very, very conscious of the fact that, I mean, let's keep it a buck. This season is probably turning south in a big time way right now. And
turning, it's turned.
Yeah, I mean, turned, right? I mean, like, it does not look to get any better from this.
Yeah, no,
Oregon and Washington are not good teams.
Yeah.
And this is a team that started this season with a bunch of horrific luck, and then that morphed into 2 horrific injuries. And this is a team that has not in any way, shape, or form been able to catch a break this season, all season. And that's not to say that if we caught every break, this is a tourney team. But this is a team where there were 2 ways things could have tipped. There's a way that things could have tipped where this team caught every break, and then it very much could have been a tourney team. And instead it 100% went the exact opposite way. And combined with that and the fact that so many guys on this team were so much of a crucial part of the DNA of this incredible run of basketball. Like, I definitely, and I think we all are on the same page, is like, we have problems here. And like, again, like Scuzz has mapped it all out. Like, there are moves we wish Northwestern would have made here, but this kind of feels like a very proud ship that is sinking right now. And I'm just like, my main focus down the stretch here is that, like, however this goes, and if it continues to go very sideways, I'm like, I want Nicky Buckets to know every game just how much we love this guy. And then particularly for like Matt Nicholson, Ty Berry, it's like I want these guys to, like, they will not be judged by the way this particular season goes south. Like, there are guys on this team who have done unbelievable things. And if this is the way, this particular era comes to a close, then that's sad. But it's like, it doesn't take away from all of the best things. And then again, like we all know this recruiting class coming in, we know that somewhat eras wise, it's going to feel like there's a pivot. This is not the way we wanted this stretch to go for like a Ty Berry, for a Matt Nicholson, for a Nicky Buckets. And of course, it's like for Nicky, this is probably not the end of the road. But it just, for these guys where we've seen them perform in such huge moments for tournament basketball teams, this ain't it. This ain't that season. It's going south. And you keep your head high. Don't climb all the way inside of despair. These guys have delivered you, hopes and dreams, and keep your chin up for them.
Well, I think it's just a bit. I want to call out briefly. I don't think there's any magic rotational changes that we could have made earlier in the year that would have dramatically changed the fortunes or the standing of this team. I think maybe there's a game or two that we hold on and don't lose if we have a bit more depth on the bench and a bit more experience on the bench. But it's more of just a pattern we've seen for a lot of years that I want to see Northwestern break out of, because I think we need a deeper team as we go into next season and the season after. And I want to see them get out of this habit of playing Brooks and Nick and Barry 40 minutes a game. We got into that habit with Boo and Barry and Brooks last year, and I don't want that.
Right.
Let's figure out how to be a bit more, judicious with our time and get the lower end of the roster that game experience. So we feel like we can play them, maybe not in crunch time, but in just shy of crunch time.
But you need to be able to play them so your starters can
be
crunch
fresh
time
in crunch time.
Fresh,
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Nicky Buckets is doing almost 40 minutes a game every game right now.
And that just you can't maintain that throughout the entire season. I mean, it's not the NBA. I mean, we're not talking about taking games off for game management or anything, but a college basketball season is grueling.
Well, and this is a physical league. This ain't the ACC.
No, it's true.
That's right. But yeah, I mean, again, it's we can go through the upcoming schedule, but I mean, it's probably not going to get better. It just isn't. It just sucks.
The one thing we do need to just kind of keep in mind is, right now we're sitting outside of the Big Ten tournament. The bottom three teams do not make the Big Ten tournament right now. That's Penn State, Washington, and us.
Right.
So we have games down the stretch. I mean, we got Nebraska coming up. Then we're at Ohio State, at Minnesota, home for Iowa, UCLA, and then finishing off the season at Maryland. I mean, UCLA's tough this year. I mean, everyone's tough this year, but Minnesota is the team that we're chasing. We're a half game behind Minnesota for that final spot in the Big Ten tournament. Iowa's only a game and a half up on us. So we have games that we can, if we can win these games, we'll at least be able to play in the tournament. And, you get into the tournament and anything can happen, right?
Yeah. And I mean, again, it's a tough road. It just is. And like I said, we can help ourselves by getting some of these rotational things figured out, like Scuzz was talking about. Could have helped ourselves earlier, having, dealt with some of these problems earlier. But this team is just a wounded duck. And weird to say that with us just having played the Ducks, but we are just absolutely hurting. This team has just been hurt in the worst way, with losses to two of, as you guys know, the two of the most crucial players to any team in the Big Ten. And they're, we're limping along. We really pray, right? Any win right now is worth its absolute weight in gold, and will go a mile to pulling us into the tournament. And I hope we get to that point. It just feels like a season where just every single thing is going sideways, and that sucks. But no Northwestern fan certainly is in a position to complain after the run that we've been on.
A quick shout out to the women's team. They got their first Big Ten win this past week against Penn State at home. Just been a brutal season, especially in conference. I mean, they're 1-11 in the conference, and it's just been a rough go. They've got 4 games left in the season: at Rutgers, home for Maryland, at Wisconsin, home for Nebraska. Maybe try to get another game or two if possible. But
it's the big gotta love the Big Ten. Like, you're at Northwestern, you watch a team like Iowa ascend to be one of the destinations in women's college basketball, and it's like, oh, and also we're gonna add UCLA basketball, and we're gonna add Juju Watkins to the conference. So like, enjoy that. It doesn't get any easier.
Yeah. Anything else to mention before we get out of here tonight?
Yeah, I'll bring something up. So one thing that was made that got a lot of press on ESPN and other platforms was the forming of the Women's Lacrosse League, the Professional Women's Lacrosse League, which I think plays like a smaller format. I think it's like sixes. But it's a pro league, and obviously a lot of us focused on it so much because Izzy Skane was so much part of the promotional push for the game. But there's
weren't she and Kuykendall the top 2 picks of the draft they did last year?
Well, I'll put it this way: they were only the top 2 picks if the same team had the top 2 picks. Because the reason I'm bringing this up is there is a team in the WLL called New York Charging, which first of all is a cool name. That's a soccer style name. Instead of like the New York Chargers, it's New York Charging. New York Charging's roster is if you're a Northwestern fan, they should have made the unis purple, but this team has Izzy Skane and Aaron Kuykendall and Lauren Gilbert and Kendall Halpern and Molly LaLiberty and Madison Doucette. That's all on the same team. And I mean, it's amazing. I think a lot of people became aware because of a video that was up that Skate and Kuykendall were on the same team. Lauren Gilbert also on the same team. It is basically a Northwestern dream team in professional lacrosse. It's just super, super cool. And then it kind of makes you like, can we take it back to, the late 1800s, early 1900s football days? I mean, we all want to see this team play Northwestern. Like, can we just like make that happen? Like pro versus college? Like, come on. Let's get all these Wildcats on the field at the same time. But it's really cool. And if you're a Northwestern lacrosse fan, it's basically like all of your favorite players are on the same pro team. So New York Charging, look it up. Consider getting yourself a jersey.
So the draft I was thinking of was the 2024 Athletes Unlimited Lacrosse College Draft that Izzy and Kuykendall went 1 and 2, but that was for something different. But I will say I saw the clip of the two of them kind of from behind walking out onto the field for the Charging game that NU Lax had retweeted or whatever. And for a moment, I thought they were wearing Northwestern hockey style, like
so did I.
Skyline jerseys.
I thought the same thing.
The color of the Charging jersey looks identical to what the Northwestern hockey team did a couple of years ago for their fundraiser with their awesome Chicago Skyline jersey. So that was a moment where I was like, whoa, what is happening here? And then I kind of figured it out. But yeah, it is a fun little development, and great to see them out on the field again. I believe in their first game, I think Izzy scored the first goal for the Charging in this first game, and then they went on to win. So yeah, good times.
Head coach Colleen McGarity, also from Northwestern. It could not be any more of a purple squad. It's like incredible.
I did mention the Super Bowl earlier. We don't need to go back into it, but I do want to bring something up. You mentioned hockey, and I just right now as we're recording is the first game of the Four Nations tournament. The NHL doing their first ever best on best international play in over 10 years, and literally just watched Canada beat Sweden in overtime.
Spoiler alert!
Sorry, like literally as I was saying it, I watched. The puck went in. It was yeah, but this is really cool. And if you like hockey, this is really, really neat. It's kind of a prelude to the Olympics coming up next year, which will feature NHL talent. But for a hockey fan, this is really cool. Yeah, Canada, Sweden, U.S., and Finland are the 4 nations in this tournament. Playing this week, next week. If you get a chance to watch some games, there's 2 games on Saturday. Sweden, Finland is in the middle of the day, and then U.S. Canada is, I believe, 8 o'clock Eastern, 7 o'clock Central face-off for a fun one.
I don't want to talk about it a lot, but one of the things that often makes international sporting can take it to another level is when there are geopolitical undertones.
Oh, Jesus.
And let's just say that the U.S. playing at Canada in Montreal on Saturday is going to be lit in many, many ways.
Yeah, that's
and
true.
If these 2 teams, who are head and shoulders the best teams in this tournament, make the championship game in Boston the following weekend, that will also be lit in a whole lot of different ways. So just throwing that out there. I don't particularly love that undertone and the rationale and reasons behind it, but whatever.
The price of whiskey, the price of imported whiskey could drastically swing depending on the results of these games.
Oh man. The other thing I will say that is really cool, if you follow American hockey, and I don't follow it beyond listening to a couple of key podcasts that talk about this a lot, but the American hockey program has gotten significantly better. In fact, we have won 3 of the last 5 World Juniors tournaments. And the talent that exists on this team, I mean, the U.S. for years and years was putting forward teams that were these truculent defense first, block 1,000 shots, let John Tortorella coach, just boring, stupid Neanderthal hockey to try and blunt the incredible Canadian and Russian offensive players. The U.S. now has a cadre of incredible offensive players of their own right. The Tkachuks, the Hughes, Austin Matthews, to name a few. And whether they can go toe-to-toe with Canada is the question we will find out on Saturday night. But
one thing the U.S. team has going for it is, I don't know, the best goalie in the world right now.
Well, that too, but this is no longer we must beat Canada 1-0 in an old school rock fight. There's an opportunity for this to be some pretty exciting hockey and for the U.S. to show up in a way that they haven't done before. And so, if you are an American hockey fan and you're rooting for the U.S. in these games, you have a lot to be really excited about.
Hey, as long as we're talking with hockey, I'll close this. Shouts to a friend of the pod, former editor-in-chief of Inside NU, David Gold, whose BU Terriers won the Beanpot. Big upset over Boston College. David.
Oh, yeah. Boston College ranked number 1 in the country.
Yeah. David notably transferred from BU into Northwestern and holds a soft spot in his heart, and I think covered plenty of BU sports when he was there before he came over to Northwestern. So God loves a Terrier, David. Congratulations.
Does friend of the pod John Walsh know this about David Gold? Because if not, we need to rectify that at the next tailgate.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the college hockey is getting quite hyped right now, and that's everybody knows that's one of my pet passions. So
with that, we'll go ahead and leave it there for tonight. Head to our website, westlawpirates.com, where you can leave comments and questions. Find us on social media at Westlaw Pirates, and you can always follow us on YouTube now. Blue Sky, we're there, Instagram, everywhere in social media. And you can always email the show, westlawpirates@gmail.com. Tune in next time as we give our visceral and statistical views on Northwestern athletics. And look for us in the west side of Bryan Field playing the red pirate flag, because we give no quarter, especially the fourth. For John Lacombe and Eric Scasbo, I'm Sam Walter. Thanks so much for listening. We'll see you next time.